You are listening to Crazy Karen HOA. This is the pettiest snow emergency ever. The tow truck lights flashed across the snow, and Karen yelled that my car was parked too close to a snow route marker, and the HOA was towing it for winter operations. I stood there in my driveway at 6:30 in the morning. Ice cleats clipped to my belt loop, breath fogging in the freezing air, and watched Sandra Gray wave her phone at the tow driver like she was directing traffic at an airport. "Smile. I am documenting this for the file," she shouted, her voice cutting through the wind. I looked at the curb where my car sat, then scanned the entire block. There was no snow route marker anywhere, not a single post, not a painted curb, not even a faded sticker on a pole. Sandra kept yelling about winter compliance and emergency access while the driver hesitated at the controls, clearly uncomfortable. I am a building inspector in Charlotte, and I know the difference between actual code and HOA nonsense. This was pure invention. My elderly father was staying with me while he recovered from a knee replacement, and the stress of this was already making everything harder. He needed rides to physical therapy 3 times a week. And now Sandra was trying to take my car. I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Show me the marker," I said. Sandra spun around, her face red even in the cold. "It is right there," she snapped, pointing vaguely at the curb. I panned my camera slowly across the empty snow-covered sidewalk. "There is nothing there," I said. She huffed and tapped her phone screen. "The management portal shows your vehicle as non-compliant," she said. "I do not need proof, I have paperwork and vibes." The tow driver looked at me, then at her, then back at his truck. He was clearly rethinking this. Sandra was the election committee chair for the Canyon View Ice Run Winter Compliance Association, and she had a reputation for manipulating ballots and proxies to keep herself in power. I had heard stories, but I had kept my head down. That changed 2 days earlier when I put a car battery jump pack on my driveway to charge overnight. Sandra had walked past, taken a photo, and filed a complaint claiming I was running an auto shop operation. The notice showed up on my door the next morning, printed on HOA letterhead, threatening a $200 fine and a compliance hearing. I ignored it because it was absurd. Now here she was, escalating to a tow. I walked closer to the tow truck and looked at the driver. "Who authorized this?" I asked. He pointed at Sandra. "She called it in," he said. I nodded and kept my phone recording. "I am going to need your company name and the work order number," I said. He hesitated, then leaned into his cab and grabbed a clipboard. Sandra stepped between us. "You do not get to interrogate the contractor," she said. "This is an HOA matter." I looked past her at the driver. "Is this a valid tow under city code or just an HOA request?" I asked. He glanced at Sandra, then back at me. "She said it was emergency winter access," he said slowly. "But I do not see a posted marker." Sandra cut in. "I do not negotiate with winter violations," she said. Her voice was sharp and rehearsed. "The board has full authority under the covenant, and you are in breach." I kept filming. "The covenant does not create city ordinances," I said. "If there is no marker, there is no violation." She turned to the driver. "Hook it up," she said. "Now." The driver did not move. He was looking at my phone, then at Sandra, then at the empty curb. I stepped forward. "If you tow my car without a legal basis, your company is liable," I said. "I work in code compliance, and I will file a complaint with the city and your dispatcher by 8 this morning." The driver set the clipboard down and exhaled. "I am going to call my supervisor," he said. Sandra started yelling, but he ignored her and walked toward the truck cab with his phone out. She turned on me. You think you are clever, she said. You think you can stall. But the hearing is already scheduled, and you are going to pay for this and the auto shop violation. I kept my camera on her face. What auto shop? I asked. She pointed at my house. You had equipment on your property, she said. Unapproved commercial activity. I laughed. It was a jump pack, I said. For my car battery. It is not a business. She crossed her arms. The rules do not care about your excuses, she said. The driver came back and unhooked my car. My supervisor says no marker means no tow, he said. Sandra went ballistic. She started yelling about breach of contract and how the HOA had standing orders. The driver just shook his head and climbed into his truck. You will need to take it up with dispatch, he said, and then he drove off. Sandra stood there in the snow, her phone still raised, her breath coming in angry puffs. This is not over, she said. I smiled. I am counting on it, I said. I went inside and checked the HOA portal. The notice about the jump pack was there, dated 2 days ago, but when I clicked through to upload my response with photos showing it was just a battery charger, the page timed out. I tried again, same thing. I took screenshots of the error messages and saved them. Then I pulled up the covenant documents and searched for winter parking rules. There was a section on snow emergency routes, but it required the board to post signs and notify residents 48 hours in advance. No signs had gone up. No emails had been sent. I checked my spam folder. Nothing. I sent an email to the management company asking for the current winter policy and a list of designated snow routes. I copied Sandra and the board president. Then I called my insurance company to confirm my renewal deadline. They said I had 5 days. If Sandra managed to fabricate a winter hazard complaint and get it on my record, my premium would spike. That was the real pressure. She was trying to create a paper trail that would follow me. My father came into the kitchen, moving slowly with his walker. What was all the noise? He asked. I explained the tow attempt. He shook his head. When I was your age, neighbors helped each other in the snow, he said. Now they call tow trucks. I made him breakfast and checked my phone. A message had popped up in the neighborhood group chat. Someone had posted a photo of my car with the jump pack visible in the driveway, captioned, "Auto shop or fire hazard? HOA needs to step in before someone gets hurt." The post had 15 reactions already. I recognized the username. It was Sandra's friend from 2 streets over. I replied with a photo of the jump pack still in its box, showing the label. It is a car battery charger, I wrote. Sold at any auto parts store. Not a business, not a hazard. The chat went quiet for a minute, then someone else chimed in defending Sandra, saying the rules exist for a reason. I closed the app. This was coordinated. I spent the rest of the morning reviewing my security camera footage. I had a doorbell cam and a side yard camera that covered the driveway. I pulled the files from the night Sandra claimed I was running an auto shop. The timestamp showed the jump pack sitting on the pavement for 6 hours. Completely still, no activity, no customers, no tools, nothing. Then I pulled the footage from this morning. The tow truck had arrived at 6:28. Sandra had been standing on the curb waving her phone before the driver even got out. She had been waiting for him. I saved both clips to a thumb drive and labeled them. Then I checked the timestamps on the HOA portal again. My response upload had been submitted at 9:40 the night before, but the portal showed no record of it. I took more screenshots. This was evidence tampering, and I was building a file. At 10, I got a call from the management company. A woman named Brenda introduced herself and said she was following up on my email. I asked about the winter policy. She put me on hold, then came back. "We are reviewing the documentation," she said. "It should be available within 48 hours. I asked why there was no snow route marker on my street. She paused. "I will have to check with the board," she said. I asked why my portal upload had disappeared. Another pause. "Sometimes there are technical issues," she said. "I will look into it." I thanked her and hung up. 48 hours meant nothing would happen before my insurance deadline. That was intentional. That afternoon, I drove my father to physical therapy. When we got back, there was a new notice taped to my front door. It was printed on the same HOA letterhead, dated that morning, claiming I had failed to respond to the previous violation and was now subject to escalated penalties. The fine had jumped to $500, and the notice included a summons to a compliance hearing scheduled for the following evening. I pulled the tape off carefully and checked the adhesive. It was fresh. Someone had just put it there. I checked my doorbell camera. The timestamp showed Sandra's friend walking up at 1:15, taping the notice, and walking away. I saved the clip. Then I looked at the notice itself. The violation description was vague. Failure to maintain winter safety standards and unapproved commercial equipment storage. No specifics. No photos. No evidence. Just accusations. I called the management company again and asked to speak to Brenda. She was not available. I left a message. Then I called the HOA board president, a man named Greg, who lived 3 blocks over. He answered on the 4th ring. I explained the tow attempt, the missing portal upload, and the escalated fine. He sighed. "Sandra handles enforcement," he said. "I do not get involved in day-to-day stuff." I asked if he had seen the winter policy. He said he would check. I asked if he knew there was no snow route marker on my street. He said he would look into it. I asked if he was aware Sandra was posting about me in the group chat. He said he did not monitor social media. I thanked him and hung up. He was useless. That evening, I got a text from an old coworker named Mike. He had worked for the management company 2 years earlier before quitting over ethical concerns. I had mentioned the HOA drama to him in passing a few weeks back, and now he was checking in. He asked if Sandra was still on the board. I said yes. He replied, "Watch out. She has a history of fabricating violations and coordinating with management to bury appeals." I asked if he had proof. He said he had call logs and emails, but he did not want to get dragged into a lawsuit. I told him I would keep him out of it unless absolutely necessary. He sent me a screenshot of an old email chain showing Sandra and a former manager discussing how to time enforcement notices to avoid appeals. The subject line was unreadable in the screenshot, but the tone was clear. They had done this before. I went outside to clear the walkway before bed and found a glove frozen stiff on the pavement near the mailbox cluster. It was not mine. I picked it up and looked around. The mailbox area was the unofficial courtroom for the neighborhood. People gathered there to gossip, argue, and air grievances. Someone had probably dropped the glove during a heated conversation. I tossed it onto the snow pile and kept shoveling. Then I noticed someone standing across the street, holding up a phone with the screen turned away. I waved. They lowered the phone and walked off without saying anything. I finished shoveling and went back inside. My father was asleep on the couch. I covered him with a blanket and sat down to plan my next move. The compliance hearing was less than 24 hours away, and I needed to be ready. I printed copies of the security footage timestamps, the portal screenshots, the missing winter policy request, and the email from Mike showing the coordination pattern. Then I wrote a short statement summarizing the facts. No snow route marker, no valid tow, no response to my policy request, and evidence of portal tampering. I kept it clinical and factual. I had been through enough code hearings to know that emotion does not win. Evidence does. I also printed a copy of the covenant section on snow emergency procedures. It was clear. The board had to post signs and provide notice. They had done neither. If you are enjoying this HOA nightmare, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories where the Karen gets what she deserves. The next evening I arrived at the clubhouse 10 minutes early. The hearing room was a small conference space with a long table and folding chairs. Sandra was already there, sitting at the head of the table with a 3-ring binder open in front of her. Brenda from the management company sat to her left. Greg, the board president, sat to her right, looking uncomfortable. I took a seat across from them and set my folder on the table. Sandra did not look up. She was flipping through her binder, adding sticky notes to pages. I waited. At exactly 6, she closed the binder and folded her hands. "This hearing is called to order," she said. "You are here to address multiple violations of the winter compliance policy." I opened my folder. "Before we start, I need to see the winter compliance policy," I said. Sandra tapped her binder. "It is in the covenant," she said. I shook my head. "The covenant references a policy," I said. "I need the actual policy document." She frowned. "We do not provide that to residents," she said. "It is internal." I looked at Greg. "Is that true?" I asked. He shifted in his seat. "I will have to check," he said. I looked at Brenda. She glanced at Sandra, then back at me. "The policy is under review," she said. I nodded. "So you are enforcing a policy you cannot produce," I said. No one answered. Sandra moved on. "The first violation is unapproved commercial equipment storage," she said. I pulled out the photo of the jump pack in its box. "It is a battery charger," I said, "not commercial equipment." Sandra waved her hand. "The rules do not distinguish," she said. "Any equipment visible from the street is subject to review." I pulled out the covenant language. "It says commercial activity," I said. "Not equipment." "A charger is not an activity." She ignored me and flipped to another page. "The second violation is parking in a snow emergency zone," she said. I pulled out the security footage printout. "There is no snow route marker on my street," I said. Sandra tapped her binder again. "The designation was filed with the city," she said. "I do not need a sign to enforce it." I pulled out my phone and opened the city public works map. "Show me," I said. She hesitated. "I do not have access to that," she said. I turned the phone toward Greg. "There is no designation," I said. He leaned forward and squinted at the screen, then sat back. "I will have to verify that," he said. Sandra was getting angry. "You are wasting everyone's time," she said. "The violations are documented." I pulled out the portal screenshots. "My response was uploaded," I said. "But it disappeared from the system." Brenda looked uncomfortable. "That is a technical issue," she said. "We will investigate." I leaned forward. "Or it is evidence tampering," I said. Sandra slammed her binder shut. "This hearing is over," she said. "The fines stand. You have 30 days to pay or face a lien." I stood up. "I am filing an appeal," I said, "and I am requesting a full audit of enforcement actions for the past year." Sandra stood too. "You do not have standing," she said. I smiled. "I am a homeowner in good standing," I said. "I have every right to request records." Greg cleared his throat. "He is correct," he said quietly. Sandra shot him a look. "Fine," she said. "File your request." It will be processed in 60 days. I gathered my folder. I will expect it in 15, I said, per the covenant, and I will be filing a complaint with the city about the fake snow route. I walked out before she could respond. That night, Mike texted me again. He had been asking around and heard that Sandra was not current on her own HOA dues. He said a former board member had mentioned it in passing. I asked if he could confirm. He said he would try. The next morning, I filed a formal records request with the management company, asking for a full list of delinquent accounts and enforcement actions taken in the past 12 months. I also filed a complaint with the City Public Works Department about the fake snow route designation. The clerk took my information and said someone would follow up within a week. I thanked her and left. 2 days later, I got a call from a woman who introduced herself as the HOA attorney. Her name was Lisa, and she sounded tired. She said the board had asked her to review my appeal. I summarized the situation. She asked if I had documentation. I said yes. She asked me to email it to her. I did. She called back an hour later. "This is a mess," she said. "There is no winter policy, the portal logs show your upload was deleted manually, and the tow was not authorized under the covenant." I asked what happens next. She said she was advising the board to withdraw the fines and issue a formal apology. I asked about Sandra. She sighed. "That is up to the board," she said. "But I am recommending they adopt an enforcement checklist that limits her authority." I thanked her and hung up. The next evening, I got an email from Brenda. The fines had been withdrawn, and the board was issuing a written apology. The email included a draft enforcement checklist that required 2 board members to approve any fine over $100 and mandated that all policy documents be posted on the portal within 30 days. I forwarded the email to Mike. He replied, "About time." Then I checked the portal. My original response had been restored, timestamped correctly. I downloaded it and saved a copy. The following week, I received a notice that the HOA was holding an emergency board meeting to address procedural concerns. The meeting was open to all homeowners. I showed up early and took a seat in the back. Sandra was already there, sitting in the front row with her binder. Greg was at the head table with 2 other board members I did not recognize. Lisa, the attorney, sat to his right with a stack of files. The room filled up quickly. A lot of people had heard about the enforcement mess and wanted to see what would happen. Greg called the meeting to order and summarized the issue. He said the board had received complaints about inconsistent enforcement and had hired an auditor to review the records. The auditor was not present, but the findings were. He handed the floor to Lisa. Lisa stood and opened one of her files. She said the audit had revealed multiple issues. First, the winter compliance policy had never been formally adopted by the board, which meant all enforcement actions under that policy were invalid. Second, several homeowners had been fined for violations that were not listed in the covenant. Third, the portal had been manually altered on at least 6 occasions to delete or modify resident submissions. She paused and looked directly at Sandra. And fourth, the audit found that the enforcement committee chair is currently delinquent on her own dues by more than 18 months. The room went silent. Sandra stood up. "That is a lie," she said. Lisa pulled out a printout and handed it to Greg. "It is documented," she said. Sandra turned red. "Someone made a mistake," she said. "I have been paying." Greg looked at the printout, then at Sandra. "This shows no payments since 2 years ago," he said. Sandra stammered. "I use autopay," she said. Lisa shook her head. "There is no auto-pay record," she said. "You have been enforcing rules you were not following." Sandra tried to argue, but the room was turning. People started shouting questions. Someone asked how she had been allowed to stay on the board while delinquent. Someone else asked if the fines could be refunded. Greg banged a gavel and called for order. He said the board would be addressing all enforcement actions from the past year and issuing refunds where appropriate. He said Sandra would be stepping down from the enforcement committee immediately. Sandra grabbed her binder and walked out. No one stopped her. Lisa continued. She said the board was adopting the enforcement checklist I had seen in the email, and she was recommending that all future fines require documentation and a 30-day appeal window. She also said the board would be hiring a new management company because the current one had failed to maintain proper records. Brenda sat in the corner, looking miserable. After the meeting, I approached Lisa. I thanked her for handling it. She nodded. "You did the work," she said. "You documented everything. Most people do not." I asked what would happen to Sandra. Lisa said that was up to the board, but given the delinquency and the evidence of coordination, she expected Sandra would be removed entirely. I asked about the tow company. She said I could file a complaint with them directly, but since the tow had been cancelled, there was no damage to pursue. I thanked her again, and left. The next morning, I got a text from Mike. He said Sandra had resigned from the board entirely and was putting her house on the market. He had heard it from someone in the title company. I did not reply. I did not need to. A week later, I got a formal letter from the board apologizing for the enforcement errors and confirming that all fines had been refunded. The letter also included a copy of the new enforcement checklist and a link to the updated portal where all policies were now posted. I printed the letter and filed it. 2 weeks later, I ran into Greg at the mailbox cluster. He apologized for not acting sooner. I told him I appreciated the apology, but the system needed to change so this did not happen again. He agreed. He said the new enforcement checklist was already working, and the board was interviewing new management companies. I asked if Sandra had left yet. He said she was still in the house, but keeping a low profile. I nodded and walked back to my driveway. My father was sitting on the porch, watching the snow melt. "How did it turn out?" he asked. I sat down next to him. "It turned out fine," I said. He smiled. "Good," he said. Someone needed to stand up to her. The final piece came a month later when I received a check in the mail from the HOA for the full amount of the fines plus interest. The memo line said, "Settlement per board resolution." I deposited it and closed the file. My insurance renewal came through without any complaints or premium increases. My father finished his physical therapy and moved back to his own place. The neighborhood went quiet. No more group chat drama. No more fake violations. No more tow trucks at dawn. The new management company sent out a survey asking for feedback on enforcement procedures, and I filled it out honestly. I included copies of the security footage, the portal screenshots, and the email chain Mike had sent me. I did not hear back, but I did not need to. The point had been made. Looking back, the whole thing was exhausting, but it taught me something important. HOAs only have the power you let them take. Sandra thought she could run the board like a personal fiefdom because no one had ever challenged her. She thought paperwork and vibes were enough. But the moment someone pushed back with real evidence, the whole thing collapsed. The board adopted an enforcement checklist that limits Karen tactics. The HOA attorney withdrew mid-crisis, corrected Sandra in plain language, and the board panicked because they had to answer homeowners with no cover. A documented appeal overturned the decision on the record, and Sandra lost everything she had built on intimidation and fake compliance. The tow truck driver hesitated because he knew something was wrong, and that hesitation bought me the time I needed to prove it. I still see the glove sometimes, half buried in the snow near the mailbox cluster. I leave it there as a reminder. Winter is hard enough without people making it worse. The Canyon View Ice Run Winter Compliance Association still exists, but it is different now. The rules are posted. The enforcement is documented. The board answers questions. And Sandra is gone. I will see you in the next HOA story.